listening to Parental Advisory in Reverse, a new podcast from a Gen X daughter caring for both her aging parents, finding her way, and sharing unique and inspiring stories with new and old friends. Because you just can't make this stuff up. Today's episode is with someone who brings equal parts heart, humor, and hard-earned wisdom, my friend Abby. If you've ever found yourself laughing through the tears while caring for a loved one, Abby is definitely your people. She has this uncanny ability to tell the funniest stories right in the middle of the hardest moments, and somehow it makes the truth easier to hear. Abby cared for her dad till the very end with a level of devotion that you can feel in every word that she shares. Her stories remind us that hospice comes with unexpected moments, things that you don't know until all of a sudden you know. The questions, the exhaustion, the unexpected moments. She loved him so fiercely, and he loved her and her siblings just as much. He really did receive the best care in the world. This conversation prepares me in ways that I didn't even really know I need, especially for what the final month could look like when you're taking care of your parent at home. So settle in. You might laugh. You might cry. You might do a little bit of both. Here's Abby. I wore my Aloha shirt just
I love
for
that.
you. Yeah,
How
I got this
fitting.
at the lavender farm in Maui.
So this morning when I was starting to think about this, I started getting really sad, maybe more emotional, but in a good way, in a loving way. I was so grateful for the ending stages, as hard as it was. It was awesome. It was super hard, but there's times in it that were absolutely hysterical. But, there's a lot of parts that are helpful to other people at this point.
What did he need help with?
Just to give you a little bit of a quick backstory. So in 2015, I moved back here from Hawaii because my dad was not in the greatest of health. And so the mini caretaking story begins there. My dad had bariatric surgery. And so I got a little glimpse of his non-compliance at that point. And then I got to sort of convalesce through that, and I was living with him at that time as well. And then we went through a knee surgery, and he was also non-compliant with that. But he allowed me to help him through some of the harder pieces, and I had to allow him too to be a person. And then this last sort of push was the harder part. And he began having falls, and he began getting sicker, and then he'd be well. But, the last part was he ended up having pancreatic cancer. So really before we even knew that, trying to talk him into coming to my house to stay. And he lives, 3 blocks from me, basically. And so there was just a lot of, stepping in and then stepping back and then stepping in and then stepping back. And what the end of that looked like is home hospice.
Yeah. What do you remember as one of the funniest?
One of the funniest would probably be, so my dad wanted to have home hospice, which I didn't realize what a task that would be. Again, absolutely beautiful. I would not have wanted to step in and change any of his wishes, but it is now 4th of July. My dad is, at this point, not coma-like, but every once in a while he would, sort of come to a bit. This stage lasted, I don't know, a few weeks. So there were so many we think this is the end. And so there's 4 of us kids, and we are around my dad's bed because we think this is the end. And my brother-in-law was at the 4th of July Fest in Carmel working the fair, and my brother-in-law comes in, and he has bought a giant box full of fair food, fried Oreos, funnel cakes, anything that you can think of that's fair food. We are now around my dad's bed, eating fair food around, basically on top of him. And that is how our life really is and was, is just like you can't script it. And I bet you that my dad absolutely loved it, but never in a million years would I think I would say, pass me a fried Oreo. Here, I want a piece of a funnel cake. I don't know, probably 8 of us standing around and just eating food. And it was hysterical. And, and that's a memory that, if you would have told me, would I want to do that? No, but I am so glad that I got to do that.
Do you remember any others?
So we talked my dad into making the lower level of a tri-level, basically an apartment. And so it's basically like a studio. As my dad was getting like further and further, he started taking like pain medicine, and he was getting more, not as lucid. He was having us push him around in the wheelchair, and he thought that he was going on walks, and he was having a ball. He thought he was visiting his friends, and
That sounds like a moment of joy in all the chaos and sadness.
yeah. Since there was 4 of us kids, we were all 1 year apart. And, everybody's living their own lives. I was living in Hawaii for a long time, and life just is what it is. But once my dad went on home hospice, the 4 of us kids ended up spending almost an entire month together. It became like a giant slumber party. Because of the situation, the 4 of us became so close. And it reminded us of like being kids. But there
Oh,
was a
that's
lot of
great.
pieces that were not awesome.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the not awesome parts that now when you're looking back, the things you kind of wish you had known, or maybe what you all would do a little differently.
So my mom passed away at 52 from breast cancer. And my mom and dad were just absolutely positively in love, and they did everything together. And when my mom finally was at the end stages of breast cancer, she did home hospice as well. And I remember that the hospice people were absolute angels. They were there all the time. They were so sweet. There were some upstairs with my mom. There would be some downstairs with us, and they were there all the time. And so much so that my dad takes Thanksgiving meals into that same hospice, for 25 years going forward. And so when I was with my dad at the final ER visit, they wanted him to stay, and he looks at me and he says, "Abby, I don't want to stay here. Do I have to stay here?" In my mind, I thought, well, hell yeah, you have, But he looked at me in such a way and asked, "Do I have to?" And I said, "No, you don't have to." I knew what that meant. I knew what that looked like. And so I said, "You don't have to stay here. However, I just want you to have all the information so that you can make a decision going forward. If you don't stay here, I believe what it would look like is that you would be stopping treatment going forward, and they'll probably have to talk about hospice." And he said, "That's fine." And so I said, "Let's just talk to the doctor. Let's tell her what your wishes are, that you don't want to stay, and let's just see what they say." So she came in the room and she said, "I'll make a referral to hospice." And so I thought, okay, let's start doing this. So I told my sister, start interviewing hospices. And I thought, oh, it's going to be like what happened with mom. And it was not like what happened with mom. I had my mind that, that they'll be there all the time and that it's going to be awesome. And they just know what to do and they take care of everything. And that wasn't my experience. And I wish I would have known that I could do it sooner, but I actually had to fire one hospice and get another one. We ended up doing a whole lot of caretaking that we weren't prepared for. We did it, but I just wish that I would have known like what I was doing, how I was doing. I would have been more prepared for it. But I think that, just letting people know, like, what it looks like. And maybe not every company is like that, but to just do research on what it looks like and to be prepared.
I had that conversation recently with my mother. She wanted to know what all they could do for my dad. I think right now they're only coming once or twice a week for maybe 15 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on which nurse it is. And I think I thought it would be a little more often. He's still driving, and he, um, probably pretty soon can't lift the rollator up into the car, so I don't know that he'll be able to drive. Thought they would come more often, but, they just check vitals and make sure he's not got any problems, and he doesn't have any problems yet. So I guess I've been wondering what it'll look like when they're there more often and the problems start, like the complications start.
Yeah. Allison, that reminds me of one funny, not funny with the driving. So my dad, so I'm talking about the sweetest man that ever walked the earth, okay? And so in Jewish culture, we call them a mensch, and there's not very many of them. And he's one of them. And he would not drive. And he kept getting in car accidents and he kept falling and he would not walk. I tried to sort of get him to walk less or drive less, but he kept crashing cars. And that was another piece that, there's a very thin line between taking somebody's dignity and not killing other people on the road, innocent people. There's been times where we've decided that he's gonna not drive, and we had like schedules that I would come over, we'll do whatever you need to do, and I would get to his house and his car wouldn't be there. And so I'd just hang out there, and it almost felt like a role reversal where when I was a teenager, he would be waiting in the driveway for me because I wasn't supposed to be gone, and he's just waiting there going, and, or like he'd be at the grocery store and he wasn't supposed to be there. And one of my friends would see him there and he would say, please don't tell Abby, please. And so it's like funny, but not funny. Like, if I'm going to the grocery anyway, why take the risk? When they're still up and moving, it's hard to tell, like, what, how bad are they? He even agreed that he would go and take a driving assessment. And as bad as the driving assessment was, the assessor said, well, how about you only take right turns and you only travel between noon and 3. And I wanted to hurt that man. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me, but
when I'm there, I offer to drive. And then one time we went to the bank and he still drove
Right.
and I rode with him. I was like, literally, I could be driving.
Or the falling, I would say, Dad, just stand right here. I'm going to walk inside so I can unlock the door. And I would turn around and he would be on the ground. And then man never complains about anything. But I'm like, we decided you were going to stand right here. And he's always like, wait, no, I'm fine. I'm like, but I'm not fine.
Right. It's like you're worried for their safety and then you're also worried for your own nerves.
And the falling thing is really, it takes a toll on your body. We did as much as we could. We gave him the life alert fall thing and he would not wear it. And then I would call the life alert thing and they would say, yep, there's no steps taken. And I said, Dad, they can tell which direction, there's a gyroscope in it. They can track it. And they said it hasn't been on.
I wanted both of my parents to get a fall life alert thing. My dad, of course, said no. And my mother, she didn't want one either, even after she fell. But we did program her Apple Watch to notice if there's a fall and she can call 911 from it. Brilliant. I don't know if she knows how to do it,
Brilliant.
but it's better than nothing, I guess. I'm hopeful that's better than nothing. I don't think either of them have fallen in the last couple weeks, but it is definitely scary. The falling is the one thing that the hospice nurse said that she's the most concerned about.
Even with hospice, when hospice came out, this is kind of another kind of a funny story. Funny, not funny, but funny, right? So they came out to do the assessment on my dad, and my dad is sitting on the corner of the bed, and there's myself, my sister. We're all like, the ladies asking questions. And I'm thinking, this man better freaking qualify because right now he's looking pretty good, But I'm like, I need some freaking help with him. So he's got the TV remote. He's watching TV. The lady's asking him questions. She says, Mr. Davis, do you need any help with taking your medications? And he says, nope. I put them in my pill containers. I go pick them up. I take them every day by myself. And he looks at me and he says, Abby, do I take them by myself? And I'm like, well, sure. And she says, Mr. Davis, do you need any help toileting? And he says, nope. I walk in there. He says, Abby, do I? And I'm like, well, yeah, I think he does. And so anyway, he is sounding like he could run a marathon. And so at some point I had to say, Dad, now listen. Okay, you've got to be absolutely truthful on this thing so that you can get some help. And so the lady says, we're going to get some equipment in here so that if you need it, it's here. And so she starts saying, we're going to get a bedside commode. And he says, I don't need that. And I said, well, if you don't need it, what's the big deal? Maybe we'll just put it over in the corner. And he's like, fine. Because at this point, he trusted me enough to just to trust me on some things. Like I could sort of push him in a way that he still had dignity. And so it came to the hospital bed. And that is when he turned the TV off and he said, absolutely not. And I said, what's happening? Like what? I said, how come we can't get the bed? And he says, and he started crying and he said, because when they got the hospital bed here, that's the last time I got to talk to your mom. And as soon as she went into the bed, that's when it really got bad. And I said, okay, how about we just get the bed for me so that when I stay over here, I don't have to sleep on the couch. And he said, okay. Thank goodness we got the bed because it wasn't very long from the time that he was playing around with the TV when the hospice person was doing her assessment. And I'm thinking he's not going to qualify. It was not very long from that point until he could not get out of a bed. I know how agonizing that had to have been for him, but thank goodness. That's one beautiful piece with hospice is they have access to equipment.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Our entire family is like hard stuff, but with humor. We don't wallow around in it, you know?
Yeah.
So-
I really like that story. We had a conversation about a hospital bed also. My mom was like, "Where are we gonna put it?" And it needs to be in his bedroom by the bathroom. And I was like, "Well, when he needs a bed, he won't be getting out of it to go to the bathroom." I know that conversation with
Mhm.
him will be really hard. I mean, he's probably gonna need the hospital bed like your
Yeah.
dad, long before he agrees to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cared enough for us and about our comfort that, he's not going to cause a fuss. But I know that bringing back memories of my mom and how painful that was.
Just wondering how that's gonna go because mine are gonna be fairly close together. There's not gonna be that, like, large 25-year gap, right? Like, they are actually
Mhm.
probably not going to get to experience that with each other. I don't know what
Mhm.
that's gonna look like, but that's a really good, like, distinction about your situation.
There's lots of hard questions that should be asked. For me, like I did not think that I would be taking care of um like bedside brief changes and things that I think my dad would have been embarrassed by, but I just had to do it or figure out a workaround. And I tried to do it in the way that would make it not as uncomfortable as possible. They're not the hospice people are not there all the time. Uh, I hadn't thought about like dressing changes and supplies, like changing shirts. And I finally was like, let's cut up the back and we're going to put a shirt on like this. And even learning how to position him in bed and move him up. And he stayed around for a month, just with us thinking, this is the moment, this is the moment, this is the moment. And I think that I kind of felt bad, like to keep calling the hospice people because I didn't know what an emergency was. I wish I would have known exactly how to administer medicine and not just like, okay, they told me once, I think I'm doing it right. I feel like I learned things after, like I was doing them wrong. And then I'm, like going, oh my gosh, I was probably choking him. I don't know. Like hygiene stuff and, positioning and moving and who's going to do it. One major thing that I would have done, I was advocating for a catheter, and it wasn't until way after that somebody said, "Well, how come we haven't cathed him?" And I said, "Are you kidding me?" So advocating on top of advocating on top of advocating, because there was a point where I'm like, I don't want to be pushy. Like I'm not like a medical person. But at the same time, well, yeah, hello, I kind of am because I'm the one doing it.
That's a really good point. I mean, folks like me don't know what to expect, right? I'm gonna ask them in the last month or in the last 6 weeks or in the last 8 weeks of what we guess is the last 8 weeks, how often will you be here? And what is the role? They live in a really small town, and so I think there's only 3 hospice provider choices, and actually, the one they're using just announced that they were gonna close, and another company bought them, so they're not gonna close. But now there's one fewer company, and they are very sweet, but I'm wondering, like, when it comes down to I'm not a medical professional either, and neither is my sister. You pose really good questions. Who's gonna move them around and who's gonna address some of that? Because 'Cause I'm assuming they can't be there 24 hours.
Yeah, and it takes way more than one person too. Like if you're just trying to slide, like I was trying to slide my dad up the bed, or like there was times when all of a sudden I would notice, oh my God, what is happening? Like everything is wet. And then there's a part of me that's like, oh my gosh, like I need to help him like immediately, like from such a loving place, and like I want to get my sister involved. I don't know what we're gonna do, and I don't want her to, like, freak out, but, I'm like, "Okay, listen, I don't want you to say anything, okay? I'm gonna show you something, have 0 reaction." Because I don't know how much my dad is alert or not alert,
Right.
and meanwhile, everything is wet. I don't know where it's all coming from or what to do or you know what I mean? But it needed to be taken care of immediately. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
how to move people or this and that, you know what I mean? But we figured it out. And I will tell you that it is a good thing that my sister was friends with somebody that happened to be a hospice nurse that lived the third house from us because she came in a few times. We learned how to do what we needed to do in the middle of the night with her. She saved us a couple times when we just literally did not know what to do. And she was so fabulous. She is exactly what I remember that it was like with my mom. And so, I knew I was already in deep when I made the decision to terminate the first group and then bring in the next one. But when I said we have we have to end this and get another one, that message was just sent upstairs. Somebody figure out who else can take over while I'm down here because we're not going to do another day, another hour, another minute. And so if people have the time to research and then talk to people who have done it before, I didn't know.
That's a good tip. I do know the lady across the street is a retired nurse. Hospice gave me a list of retired nurses. And so that might be something to supplement depending on how it goes. Or my biggest fear, both of them at the same time being in a hospital bed. I don't even know what that'll look like. I have no idea. Tell me about your siblings. How did that dynamic work? You hear so many negative stories, so I like that yours is positive.
So after my dad passed away, there's this period when somebody passes away when you're Jewish. It's called sitting Shiva. And we decided that we had already sat Shiva, that we were together for a month. And so it was hysterical. We're like, we're doing things our own way. And they're like, anybody want to do this any longer? And it was hysterical. So
That just sounds so typical of, like, our generation of, like, you just had to figure it out, and
yeah,
you kinda make the rules up as you're going
yep,
and tweak the traditions and
yep.
figure out what works for you. I love that.
My dad prepared everything to a T so that we would not have to take care of anything that was his. This is really interesting to me too. My dad had even paid his utility bills a month in advance. And so I don't know how he figured out to do it up to that last part because he was not well. But he did it. He For years he's been telling me, Abby, this is where the documents are for my funeral. There's funeral insurance. This will cover everything. There's a policy right here. And, he knew that he didn't want to leave a mess for us.
That's
And,
nice.
that's another piece that, I'm so grateful for. And, I've taken notes.
What has it taught you about your own aging and
Yeah.
preparing you have a daughter, so how has it prepared you?
Well, how it's prepared me is that I know that when the universe wants their people, they take their people. I know that things are temporary. I'm not attached to much, honestly. I move through the world pretty fluidly. I like my dad try not to make a giant footprint. I try to honestly keep things simple and I've got some people that know where my things are. I'm prepared in that same way. And my dad said, I don't want a big funeral. Please, please. Like this is an emotional time. Please do not do anything. Do not waste your money. He's just pragmatic, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm sort of like-minded in that way.
What else would you wanna add that we haven't talked about?
I think that the more people have a network of people that have gone through the end of life stuff that have made it out and they're not so scarred by it, I think that we build a community where people can come to for guidance and for positive support. And I maybe add that I'm more than happy to be contacted if somebody wants to, the small fine-tuned cuts of the things that I really, really, really wish I would have known.
Yes, I may be calling on you for that.
Yeah, love it.
I think you've opened my eyes to that it is not going to be a straightforward process, right? If like for a whole month, there were multiple times that you thought this is it. I've wondered what that will look and feel like.
Yeah, and I remember just thinking, I'm so blessed to be sitting here. I'm so blessed because my dad, he loved us so much.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I think we can have lots of different complicated relationships and complicated family dynamics, and that does sound like a blessing opportunity.
Oh, I remember my dad said, I want to go home. I don't want to stay in the hospital. I just want to be with my dog. And I'm like, okay. I'm sitting there going, I love you. I love this moment, but my God, we couldn't have done this in a hospital.
Like, it sounds like you did a great job.
But yeah, I think we did a bang up job.
Abby's story is one that will stay with me. She cared for her dad with fierce love and devotion that honored his wishes, even though caring for him at home through hospice was not the easiest path. She stayed present, she stayed loving, and she walked him through that final chapter with humor, tenderness, and the kind of strength you don't know you have until you're called to use it. And next week, grab a Kleenex if you did not need a Kleenex this week, because we meet Becky, the quintessential Gen X daughter who is officially fed up of being the responsible one. But through it all, even in the overwhelm, she still manages to find meaning and gratitude as she takes care of her mother, Mary Margaret. And here's the thing, Mary Margaret doesn't have cancer like my parents or some of our other guest parents. In fact, she's not even really Becky's mom anymore. Tune in to find out why and to hear a story that will resonate with anyone caring for a parent who is slowly fading away right in front of you. See you then. You've been listening to Parental Advisory in Reverse. Real stories about Gen X adults taking care of the people who raised us. If you are in the thick of caregiving or just curious about what it looks like, you are in good company here. Follow the show wherever you listen and pass it along to someone who could use a little community right now, because caring for them starts with caring for yourself.